Hey guys, tonight we slip past sleepy sheep and tiptoe into the pre-dawn hush of a Celtic stone circle. The sky still yawning as pale light creeps over the horizon. You tug your cloak tighter against the biting breeze, inhaling the crisp tang of dew-soaked grass mixed with a salty hint of sea spray stronger than your roommate's leftover sushi experiment. The stones loom like silent sentinels, their rough surfaces etched with lichen that glows ghostly green in your lantern's beam. You probably won't survive a face plant onto these frost-coated slabs in your slippers, trust me. Dignity and balance are negotiable, but hey, that's part of the fun. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment below sharing where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You drag your feet along a narrow earthen path, the wind teasing loose strands of your hair like a playful trickster. Each gust ripples across the circle, singing through gaps between stones in a low, breathy chorus that feels almost conversational. Imagine Siri getting into ASMR. In the distance, the call of a curlew pierces the air, its lonely cry echoing off the monoliths like ancient voicemail. You lean in hand, braced against a weathered stone, and let the wind's voice wash over you. Above, or in the previous part, you caught the scent of sea spray. Here you feel the stones themselves exhale history. It was around 55 BCE when Julius Caesar completed his conquest of Gaul, sending shock waves through Celtic lands and igniting resistance that would echo for generations. Yet long before Roman legions marched these fields, Druids believed wind was the literal breath of gods whispering through stone pillars. Strange fact, some rural farmers swore their cattle tensed up in certain stone circles during high winds, convinced the stones emitted low-frequency hums only bovines could sense. You lean closer to a solitary monolith, fingertips grazing ancient cup marks worn smooth by moss and time. The wind whistles through a shallow groove carved along its edge, possibly a deliberate channel to catch the first breeze of dawn. You cup your ear, and the sound sharpens into an unmistakable sigh like the exhale of a long-forgotten oracle. As you listen, your mind drifts to that dramatic moment in 175 CE when tree-covered Vesuvius erupted, covering nearby towns in ash. But here, the only eruption is of swirling mist and whispered counsel. You press a palm to the stone's cool, damp surface, feeling tiny vibrations beneath your skin, proof that even solid rock can resonate with hidden frequencies. Historians still debate whether Druids intentionally arranged monoliths to amplify these vibrations, or if the effect was a delightful accident later woven into ritual lore. You smile at the thought of early rock concerts minus the electric guitars and plus a lot more ritual sacrifice. A sudden rush of wind rips across the circle, tugging at your cloak and raising goosebumps along your arms. The stones respond in kind, their collective hum rising into a symphony that feels both alien and oddly comforting. You breathe deeply, tasting the mineral tang of dripstone condensation mixed with earth like licking an old cave wall, but less gross. Your heart matches the stone's pulse as the wind intensifies and you half expect sparks to fly, if only for a dramatic Instagram boomerang. Walking clockwise around the circle, you note each pillar's slight tilt and carved notch, subtle alignments that catch the breeze at precise angles. You pause at a triangular stone whose top is hollowed into a shallow basin, likely a rain catch. But here it amplifies gusts into a whistling lament. You cup both hands around the basin and whisper, "Hey, over here," just to see if the wind will answer back. Instead, a deep moan slides across the stone like a distant horn calling lost sailors home. You inch forward, balancing on frost-slick grass, aware that one misstep could land you flat on your back, another point against slipper-wearing excellence. Yet the risk heightens the thrill you feel like a medieval tightrope walker in a haunted carnival. As the wind snakes through the circle, you imagine druids gathering here centuries ago, robes billowing, chants rising, trying to decode each gust as portent or promise. A stray wisp of mist curls around your ankles, and you catch a fleeting glimpse of carved spirals winding up one monolith's shaft symbols of renewal and rebirth. Rumor has it, druids believed these spirals captured eddy currents that revealed shifts in seasons. You trace the pattern with your thumb, feeling the grooves chill and grit. Suddenly, a gust funnels through the circle's center, colliding with stones and ricocheting back like a cosmic pinball. You stagger arms, flailing, and laugh at the absurdity modern parkour meets ancient meteorology. Strange fact, local legend claims that on rare nights, the circle rings with phantom laughter when wind speeds hit exactly 12 Airhosamib, said to be the velocity favored by Morrigan, the war goddess. You glance at your onomometer app. Yes, there's an app. And sure enough, it ticks just past 12. You grin, raising an eyebrow at the stones, as if challenging them to a duel of wits. Each pillar's silhouette seems to shift in the half-light, as though alive, leaning closer to share secrets in hushed breezes. You imagine gnomic figures perched atop those stones, quills in hand, transcribing each whisper into leather-bound tomes. Historians still debate whether any of those texts ever survived, or if the Romans burned every last Druid manuscript in a fit of legislative overkill. You shiver both at the wind's chill and the weight of lost knowledge. A sudden lull drops the wind to a ghostly sigh, and the stones fall silent, standing like stern judges awaiting your verdict. You take a slow, grounding breath, tasting the damp moss on your tongue. Then, as if on cue, a final breath of air glides through the circle, carrying with it a faint scent of heather and pine, a closing benediction. You press your palm to the central flat stone, feeling its warmth absorbed from countless dawns. Above, or in the previous part, you learned how druids revered wind as divine breath. Now you feel that reverence in your bones. The circle's hush seems to cradle you, the very air humming with anticipation for what comes next. And as you step away from that central stone lantern held high, you carry with you the echo of ancient voices, winds of time, speaking through stone, ready to unveil their next secret. You lean against a moss-slick monolith, eyes closed, and let the wind swirl around your ears like a soft lullaby. Only this one comes free of subscription fees. Above, or in the previous part, you felt wind singing through gaps in the stones. Here, you discover why druids called it the breath of the gods. You press your palm into the cold granite, feeling tiny vibrations ripple under your fingers like a divine purr, or maybe just very ancient tectonic indigestion. Either way, you're tuned in. The morning breeze slips through your cloak, carrying the scent of wild thyme and damp earth, mingling with the distant tang of brine from the sea cliffs half a mile beyond. You inhale deeply, savoring the herbal perfume as if it were a free sample from Mother Nature's fragrance counter. Druids believed each gust was a messenger from deities Tyrannus, god of thunder, Bridget, goddess of poetry, and that those gods exhaled stories through the stones. Strange fact, some legends say Druids would whisper questions into carved hollows in the pillars, then press their ears to the opposite side, hearing the gods' responses in the echo. It wasn't just meditation. It was Bronze Age voicemail. As you tilt your head to capture a higher-pitched whistle, you can almost make out words if your Gaelic were up to snuff. Instead, you get an ethereal whoosh that reminds you of your phone's push notifications, minus the existential dread. Historians still debate whether Druids arranged the stones to channel specific wind patterns or simply accepted happy accidents as divine design. You let that uncertainty sink in like a drizzle soaking through your wool socks, uncomfortable yet oddly soothing. You open your eyes and watch the wind sculpt mist around one pillar's base, creating a mini tornado of vapor that swirls like a prehistoric snow globe. It's the kind of scene that would break TikTok if filtered through the right Lomo preset. But for Druids, it was sacred. They read the mist's dance as Ariadne's thread to divine intention, tracing spirals and eddies for guidance on planting seasons and tribal peace treaties. Popular event Remember Boudica's revolt in 60 CE. When Celtic tribes rose against Roman rule, Druids are said to have interpreted that reeking gale of war drums as a celestial warning, urging Britons to take up arms. You shiver at the thought both from cold and from picturing your ancestors crowd surfing a Roman cohort. A sudden gust sweeps across the circle, rattling the lichens like tinfoil at a surprise party. You flinch, nearly toppling over, then laugh at your own drama. It's like unwrapping a spicy chip without checking the ingredients list, thrilling with just enough shock to keep you on your toes. You steady yourself and whisper, "Nice one," to the stones, imagining the Druids cracking similar jokes around a fire, minus the ringing of cell phones. You step closer to a slender pillar, carved with a deep U-shaped channel running from top to bottom. The channel catches the wind and amplifies its resonance, transforming a gentle breeze into a sharp, echoing tone, like blowing across a bottle's rim, but grand enough to alert half a village. You cup a hand around the channel's mouth and hear a low hum vibrating through the rock rich as cello strings in a concert hall. It's a natural amplifier honed by generations who noticed every whisper and honed it into oracular proclamations. Leaning in, you trace the channel's curve with your fingertip, feeling its smooth polishing from centuries of curious hands. A tiny flake of lichen drifts down, landing on your palm, proof that time itself is a la carte here. You chuckle and wipe it off, wondering if Druids offered these flakes as amulets, claiming they'd protect you from hailstorms and lousy Tinder dates. Strange fact fragments of carved stone rings have been found miles from their original circles, leading some to believe Druid apprentices used them as portable wind apps for quick readings on the road. You step back to catch the next breath of wind. It arrives in a gentle swell, brushing your cheek like a feathered quill, writing invisible runes on your skin. You follow its arc, gliding around the circle's perimeter, noting how each standing stone contributes its own note to the chorus, the deeper bass growl of larger pillars and the lighter flute-like trill of slender ones. Together, they form a polyphonic ensemble, tuned by nature. Modern comparison, it's like a surround sound system tuned by audiophiles minus the cables, HDMI confusion, and broken subwoofer. Above, or in the previous part, you felt wind sing through open seals. Now you feel it speak in tones. You pause at a stone etched with concentric rings, symbols of cyclical time. You close your eyes and let the wind's vibration echo in those rings like a cosmic drum circle. It vibrates your chest, a gentle tremor that feels oddly like being hugged by a friendly ghost. You take a slow breath, savoring the moment wind turned wisdom air transmuted into oracle. Suddenly, a laugh trickles across the circle your own, that is after conjuring an image of druid grandmas gossiping about wind spoilers. I told you that gust meant rain, didn't I? You smirk at the thought of ancient wind weather apps being just as unreliable as today's swing and miss forecasts. But in their defense, they had fewer satellites and more superstition, which can be equally comforting on a rainy day. A brisk gust whips through carrying a faint scent of burnt heather, like someone set fire to a bouquet in the next county. You wrinkle your nose, noting that druids sometimes burned heather bundles to cleanse stagnant spirits, believing the aroma would purify the wind itself. It seems fiddly, like sanitizing a breeze, but if you were about to hang your hopes on a wind-borne prophecy, why not spice things up? The wind calms, leaving a residual hum that vibrates in the stone's pores. You cup your hands and blow gently across your palms, comparing your breath to the wind's resonance. The sound is tinny amateurish, like a novice yodeler at karaoke, but it makes you grin, reminding you that channeling divine breath takes more than lung power. You give an exaggerated bow to a nearby pillar, half expecting it to applaud. Your boots crunch on frost-coated grass as you pause at the circle's edge. Here beneath the sculpted Celtic cross carved into the stone's face, you feel the wind's resonance shift softer, more contemplative. You kneel, placing both hands on the grass, and let the chill seep into your bones, grounding you. Historians still debate whether Druids chose cross-shaped stones under Christian influence or if early Christians simply co-opted existing sacred sites. Either way, this stone has witnessed layers of belief like a geological onion. You rise, brushing dew from your knees, and give one last listen as a final breath of wind trails through the circle, fading like the last note of a cello concerto. In that fading sound, you hear the pulse of centuries, the same wind whispering that guided Druid rituals, shaped Celtic myths, and now carries your own quiet awe. You step back onto the earthen path, lanterns glow, dimming as dawn marches in the stones, falling silent once more. And as you leave the circle's embrace, you carry with you a secret that wind is more than moving air. It's the voice of the past, speaking through stone, waiting for anyone curious and brave enough to listen. You press your back against a broad, recumbent stone, close enough that the curve of its weathered face cradles your shoulder like a giant ear. The wind whistles past your ear, then ricochets between pillars, bouncing back at you in a soft, multi-voiced echo. Nature's surround sound setup, free of Bluetooth pairing. Every gust transforms the circle into a giant wind harp, strings of air vibrating against stone surfaces with a clarity that would shame your living room hi-fi. You tilt your head, letting the echoes swirl around you. It's like standing in an ancient amphitheater, except the performers are invisible breezes and the audience is a ring of silent gray giants. The morning chill carries a metallic hint, maybe from rain, fallen on exposed quartz veins in the stones, or perhaps from distant thunderheads brewing over the western hills. You cup a hand behind your ear, coaxing the faintest echo of a whisper you swear sounds like the crackle of a campfire at midnight. Strange fact, at one famous site, archaeologists discovered a pair of stones aligned so precisely that wind passing between them produces a tone at exactly 440 hertz, the modern tuning standard for orchestras. Imagine tuning your guitar by leaning on a 2,000-year-old pillar. Talk about vintage gear. You step forward into a shallow hollow formed by a horseshoe arrangement of uprights, an acoustic sweet spot where even a soft exhale resonates like a shout. You take a deliberate breath and exhale slowly. The wind catches your breath and turns it into a low, haunting drone that sends a thrill down your spine. It's like the first time you heard binaural ASMR underwater whispers, except this is 100% natural waterproof, and you definitely won't get earwax from it. Above, or in the previous part, you felt the wind's voice in random gusts. Here, you witnessed deliberate amplification. Druids carved ear-shaped hollows and shallow channels into certain stones, refining the circle's acoustics over generations. They treated stone like a living instrument, tuning each pillar with trial and error, adding cup marks here, smoothing a face there, until the wind's murmur became a choir of voices. Historians still debate whether this acoustic mastery was intentional ritual design or an ingenious repurposing of glacial erratics that happened to sing in the breeze. Either way, the result is an audible oracle. A sudden swirl of wind sends a flurry of fallen leaves dancing across the grass, their rustle joining the stone's echo in a percussive undercurrent. You laugh, imagine a druid conductor waving twigs instead of a baton, cueing nature's ensemble. Popular event, recall Caesar's second invasion of Britain in 54 BCE, when Roman legions reportedly heard distant Celtic horns echoing through woodlands long before sighting the tribes. Druids may have used these acoustic circles to project their own auditory illusions, giving the illusion of colossal armies or divine proclamations. You shiver at the thought ancient sound warfare, minus the drone strikes. You crouch by a slender pillar with a pronounced groove running down its side like a monk's bald head. You place a cupped ear against the groove's base and whisper, "Hello." A moment later, a deep, reverberating hum returns the stone, singing back your own voice multiplied. It's like FaceTime for echoes, only much slower, and without the embarrassing frozen screen moments. You press your fingers along the groove's polished surface, marveling at how centuries of curious listeners have smoothed it to satin. Beyond the horseshoe, the circle's outer ring forms a natural echo chamber, where wind roaring outside pounds against the stones and rebounds inwards, creating a gentle white noise that settles around you like a warm blanket. You close your eyes, heart slowing to match the circle's pulse, and compare it to a modern noise cancellation system gone rogue. Only here, instead of blocking sound, it accentuates every whisper. The effect is hypnotic. You can almost will the wind to speak your name. You rise and wander toward a cluster of 3 smaller stones placed close together. Their proximity creates a wind tunnel effect that amplifies even a whisper to a resonant whistle. You lean into the narrow passage and exhale sharply, sending a pure tone ringing out so clearly it could wake napping sheep on the nearest hillside. You grin, imagining recording this on your phone and posting only to watch it go viral with captions like "Stone Whistle Challenge." Just be ready for challenges asking you to do the same on a sliding bathroom door. Trust me, it's worse. As you step back, A stray breeze catches the lip of your hood, pulling it loose and sending it fluttering like a flag in a tiny wind tunnel. You laugh at your own slapstick entrance to the circle's performance space, picturing druid apprentices tripping over their robes during an acoustic ceremony. Serious business meets ancient blooper reel. Curiously, the hood's flutter adds a tremolo effect to the surrounding echoes, blending human error with geological precision. You pause before a massive portal stone whose flat face is adorned with a shallow concave dish carved at chest height, likely a druid's listening cup. You kneel, resting your forehead against the dish, and hear the wind swirl around you in a ghostly lullaby. Strange fact, ethnographers discovered similar listening cups on Bronze Age burial cists in Ireland, suggesting acoustic divination wasn't just Celtic, but part of a broader Atlantic tradition. It's archaeology's version of finding Easter eggs in different game franchises, a neat bit of crossover lore. The wind hushes, leaving only a faint hum in the stone's core, like the dying echo of a song. You recall that in AD 43, when Claudius launched the Roman conquest of Britain, his forces encountered druid gatherings in these circles, their ceremonies so intense that some soldiers reportedly died of fright or ecstasy. You shiver at the fusion of politics, power, and percussive wind, and wonder if the Romans ever tried to replicate the acoustic magic with their own triumph processions. Probably, but without the carved listening cups, they'd just have had more drunk senators shouting into empty plazas. You stand and press your palm to the portal stone, feeling its gentle vibration and ancient heartbeat beneath your skin. It resonates like mindful meditation, connecting you to countless listeners who stood here before breathing in sync with nature's orchestra. You step away, letting the portal stone's hum fade, and follow the circle's curve back toward the horseshoe arrangement. There you find a flat bench-like stone where druids once sat to interpret sound patterns over long nights. You perch on the cool slab and listen as the wind sighs through narrow gaps, each note delivering a nuance, a caution against drought, a blessing for good harvest, or a whisper of impending conflict on distant shores. Historians still debate whether these acoustic readings were formalized rituals with codified interpretations or free-form improvisation guided by individual intuition. Either way, it was the ultimate blend of science and spirituality. The sun peaks over the eastern ridge, sending shafts of golden light across the circle and dimming the wind's resonance as the day warms the stones. You inhale the warming air, a shift from the morning's sharp tang to a mellow sun-baked scent of heather and warmed granite. It feels like nature turning off the spotlight after the show. You rise brush grass from your cloak and offer a respectful nod to the silent monoliths. You step onto the grass once more, feeling the circle's energy settle like sediment. Each stone's acoustic personality has told its story. Thunderous groans, crystalline whistles, breathy murmurs, all woven into a symphony of prophecy. And as you drift away along the narrow path you carry with you, the memory of wind transformed into oracles, proof that stone and air can collaborate to speak truths centuries old. You lean into the wind as it shifts from a gentle whisper to a firm puff that tugs at your cloak, and suddenly you're acutely aware that this circle is also a colossal barometer for the seasons. Above, or in the previous part, you felt the echoes of wind through carved grooves. Now you track the grand choreography of solstice and equinox breezes that guided druid calendars and planted fields. the air carries a distinct chill from the autumn equinox, an invisible marker of changing day length, while earlier at Imbolc, in early February, it blew from the southeast, warming the soil enough for flaxseed. Strange fact, some circles align so precisely that on the spring equinox, the wind funnels through two stones at exactly 7 maybe, the speed Druids considered ideal for encouraging budding shoots. You remember the summer solstice gatherings at Stonehenge, a popular event reenacted each June, where modern crowds marvel at the sun's alignment through heel stone. But Druids watched not just the light, but the midday breeze, which shifted eastward at precisely the moment the sun kissed the tallest trilithon. They marked that gust as a signal to start rituals honoring Lugh the Shining One. You imagine them twisting fingers and standing grains and whispering thanks to that gentle wind for ripening barley. Historians still debate whether those solstice alignments were designed by Bronze Age stonemasons or later refined by Celtic priests seeking to harness seasonal airs. As summer deepened, you felt the wind mellow into a steady warmth, carrying the honeyed scent of heather and ripe berries from nearby moorland. On Beltane's Eve, you'd stand inside the circle as flickering bonfires sent hot drafts swirling skyward, mixing with cooler night winds to create dancing eddies that looked like ghostly dancers. Druids noted each swirl, reading its patterns for omens of love and fertility. Funny modern comparison. It's like watching a GPS weather map overlay on Google Earth, only you trusted your own skin and a wool cloak instead of a smartphone. Come Lugnasad, in early August, the breeze turned sharper again, laden with the tang of ripening grain and migrating swallows riding it southward. You'd let wind-caught leaves brush your face, interpreting their dance as messages about harvest yields. Strange fact, some circles had tiny ribbon slits carved into stones where Druids tied strands of wool. By measuring how many threads snapped or frayed in a single gale, they estimated wind strength in analog anemometer centuries before mechanical meteorology. The Romans noticed these reports when they marched into Britain in AD 43, surprised to hear detailed wind predictions guiding Celtic plowmen. As autumn waned, the wind's tone deepened, carrying smoky hints of forest fires lit for Samhain, a festival marking the new year in the old Druid calendar. You'd stand among the stones as leaves rattled in skeletal patterns, reading the whispering rustle for warnings of harsh winters or raids from rival clans. Popular event medieval scribes later recorded that at a 1315 Samhain feast on Tara Hill, sudden gales doomed the harvest and presaged a famine, but long before Druids used those same gusts to prepare grain stores. You shiver at the thought, both from cold and ancestral anxiety. Then came Yule at winter solstice, when the wind fell almost silent and the air tasted of frost and pine needles. You've traced how the breath of the northwestern gales chilled the standing stones, frosting their crevices and sealing the calendar until Imbolc. Strange fact, at some northern circles, archaeologists found ice cores in stone basins suggesting Druids captured frost to brew tonic, believed to ward off spirits during the darkest nights. It sounds like a Nordic sauna, special frost bathing in a stone cradle. But for them, it was sacred science. When you circle back to your starting point, you feel the year's wind cycle settle around you like a cloak of time. Each seasonal shift brought its own voice spring's gentle, coaxing summer's warm lullaby, autumn's urgent refrain, and winter's hush, guiding, planting, feasting, prophecy, and renewal. And as you step away from the stones, the wind trails after you, a living record of nature's calendar, whispering that even long after empires fade, its messages endure in the silent witness of stone circles. You crouch beside a pillar whose surface is streaked with ancient grooves, deliberately carved channels that catch the breeze and funnel it like the perfect pour-over coffee of wind divination. Above or in the previous part, you followed seasonal gusts. Here, you decode the blueprints hidden in stone. You run your fingers along a V-shaped trench, feeling its smooth polish where centuries of curious palms have traced its length. As a sudden puff slides through the channel, it whistles past your ear in a crisp tone, an oracle's ringtone delivered with 0 subscription fees. The wind carries a distinct metallic tang today, perhaps stirred up by distant Blacksmith's Hill, where in 793 CE Norse raiders launched their first recorded attack on Lindisfarne, shocking monastic communities across the British Isles. You shiver at that legacy of iron and axe, but here the Druid channels forewarned of such incursions. A sharp hiss through a northward-facing groove meant long ships are coming. Strange fact, some circles bear twin channels carved at ear level known as whisper ducts that allowed 2 druids to converse undetected outside the main gathering, essentially a 300-year-old open-plan office hack. You stand and follow a deeper channel that runs from the stone's base up to a narrow notch at shoulder height. You press your palm into the notch, closing one ear, and the wind's path narrows into a single clarion note, like pressing mute on the rest of the world so you can tune into a divine frequency. This was no accident. Druids strategically carved these conduits to amplify winds from specific directions, letting them listen for subtle changes in weather or enemy movements. Historians still debate whether these grooves began as practical water channels later repurposed for wind, or if they were always sacred acoustic devices designed by visionary stonemasons in league with priests. You step back and observe how each channel's angle varies. One shallow groove points east toward the rising sun's morning breeze. Another curves west to catch the cool sea winds at dusk. It's like a prehistoric wind compass guiding rituals with the precision of a modern weather vane. You grin at the thought of druids swapping DIY build tips. Hey, next time, use a 30-degree notch for more bass resonance, or don't cut too deep, your hands will get stuck. A laugh escapes you. Imagine a viral how-to video top 5 stone hacks for sacred wind channels. Your foot nudges a fallen twig that skitters across a channel, clacking like a miniature cymbal. You stop to watch its journey. It slides down the groove, gains speed, then flies off at the curve's end, nature's own marble run. You follow its path, realizing druids may have tested each channel with wooden sticks or reeds before committing to permanent stone carving. Strange fact, fragments of bone skewers found at one site bear scorch marks, where druids heated them to shape channel edges, effectively soldering stone with bone and fire in an early materials experiment. As you circle the stone, you notice tiny cup marks at intervals along the grooves, little bowls carved into the trench perhaps to modulate wind flow or trap tiny offerings of herbs and honey. You peer into one cup and find a faded smear of ochre left over from a ritual blessing, or maybe a child's doodle centuries ago. A modern parallel flashes in your mind. It's like slotting coins into a wish fountain, but here you offered wild mint leaves and grain as a thank you to the wind spirits. A sudden gust rushes through a pair of parallel channels, creating a stereo wind effect that feels like standing between two subwoofers at a rock concert, only you're surrounded by silent stones and no earplugs in sight. You close your eyes, letting the twin streams vibrate your chest. It's both thrilling and oddly calming, like a natural ASMR duet. You imagine druids choreographing movement through these channels, stepping from one groove to the next to play their stone orchestra. You crouch and press your ear against another deep channel carved horizontally near the stone's mid-riff. The wind here murmurs in a lower register, resonant and soothing, like the hum of an old refrigerator, but far more mystical. You lean in, tilting your head, until the echo bounces back through a hidden chamber, producing a sustained note that feels alive under your scalp. Strange fact, at one location, engineers discovered a network of sub-channels beneath the main trench, tiny feeder ducts that distributed wind to smaller niches, effectively building a druid wind labyrinth beneath the circle. Rising, you brush the damp moss from your knees and take in the whole pillar, a complex tapestry of grooves, notches, and cup marks that read like sheet music for nature's concert. It's an ancient crossover of engineering and spirituality. You could almost doodle it into a CAD program and call it WindKOS V1.0. You laugh at the prospect, imagining a Kickstarter pitch. We're bringing Druid wind tech to your backyard, just add stone. A brief lull descends, and the grooves fall silent until you whisper into the opening of one channel. Your own voice resonates back at you, warped by the stone's acoustics into a ghost-like echo. It's a reminder that these channels serve dual purposes. They projected druid chants deep into the night and also echoed back community messages to crowds standing outside the circle. It was Bronze Age public address system meets sacred ceremony. You step away and view the pillar as a whole, each channel aligned to cardinal winds and celestial events, each notch and cup designed by hands that understood stone and air as inseparable partners. Centuries ago, Druids read these channels like modern meteorologists read barometric charts, anticipating storms, planting seasons, and even political uprisings. Popular event in 61 CE after the defeat of Boudicca's revolt, historians write that Druids used carved channels to warn retreating tribes of Roman reinforcements, sending warnings carried on the wind faster than any mounted courier. The wind returns in a gentle stream, slipping into each carved groove and humming through them as if resuming an interrupted conversation. You trace its path one last time, fingertips brushing the polished stone, and feel a profound connection across time, from those first strokes of chisels to the present moment when you stand as both spectator and participant. With a final deep breath, seasoned with earthy moss and salty breeze, you leave the stone behind, grooves echoing softly in your mind. You step onto the grass, weaving between other pillars, each awaiting its turn under your curious gaze. And as the wind trails after you, guiding your steps, you carry with you the hum of carved channels, stone-born instruments that transformed air into oracle. You press your ear against a low-set stone hollow and hear the wind sigh through it like a chorus of unseen beasts, a distant roar that sends a thrill up your spine as if you're standing on the edge of a primeval amphitheater waiting for wild creatures to take the stage. Above, or in the previous part, you tracked grooves that channeled wind. Here, you decode animal omens carried on each gust. You lean in to catch a high-pitched trill that reminds you of a bird call, only this warble echoes too deeply to be any songbird you know. Druids believed such cries were spirit hounds running across the other world, and if you heard their pack howling through the stones, it meant an urgent warning. Wolves, or worse, were on the prowl beyond the circle's edge. Strange fact, at one site, on the Isle of Skye, wind passing through an L-shaped notch sounded so uncannily like hissing snakes that locals swore the stones housed serpentine guardians. You shift, and the breeze changes, tone a low rumble like an ox's bellow rolling over a distant moor. You brace your palm against the rough surface and let that deep vibration resonate through your bones. It feels like the heartbeat of the land itself, and Druids interpreted it as the voice of the earth, readying itself for spring plowing. Popular event, remember the Battle of Clontarf in 1014 CE, when High King Brian Boru turned Viking sagas into dust and thunder. Legend says Druids heard a low, cavernous moan in the wind days before the clash, a warning that helped rally Gaelic warriors. You shiver at the thought animal omens in winds guiding armies long before military intelligence briefings existed. As you step back, you sense a subtle shift and catch the faintest rustle that sounds like wings beating against a glass window, gentle but urgent. You follow the sound to a freestanding pillar, carved with spiral motifs and cup marks. Cupping your hands around a carved cup, you summon the wind into it, and the resultant whistle is so pure it resembles an eagle's cry. Druids believed that spirit eagles circled the skies of their sacred sites, scouting for imbalance in nature or turbulence among tribes. Historians still debate whether Druids purposefully carved ear cups to mimic eagle calls or simply adapted existing designs after hearing eagles circle overhead. You grin at the image of apprentice priests testing prototypes by imitating bird calls, their robes billowing like startled wings. You wander deeper into the circle, guided by a sudden rustle that sounds like foaming horses' manes whipping in a gale. You pause before a pair of stones set close together. Wind racing through their narrow gap surges into a crackling gallop, a cavalry of wind ponies trampling invisible fields. You close your eyes and let your mind paint the scene, phantom chargers cantering across emerald hills, heralding triumphs or tribulations. In Celtic lore, ponies were linked to water sprites and provided omens of rain or flood when their manes went wild. Strange fact fragments of carved horse heads found near one circle suggest Druids once adorned a stone with a bronze bridle, tuning wind channels to produce a metallic neigh under stormy skies. It was like wind-powered equestrian cosplay minus the horses. A chill breeze drifts by, carrying the crackling snap of twigs that reminds you of a boar's tusks crunching through bramble. You quickly scan the shadows for massive bristled shapes, half expecting Hoppin' Amtris, the legendary spectral boars of ancient tales, to erupt from the gorse. In truth, this was a test of bravery for new initiates. Hearing the boar's call in wind echoed a hero's call to arms, urging warriors to don armor and defend clans. Popular event. During the Roman campaigns in Britain around 84 CE, some Druidic war bands reportedly used these winds to mask their movements, the boar-like rumbles striking terror into unsuspecting Roman scouts. You imagine centurions' listening nerves jangled, convinced they face supernatural beasts rather than mere farmers in leather. You crouch beside a triangular stone dunked in lichen, its sloping face carved with faint grooves. Wind rushing across it produces a series of chirps like tiny crickets playing a frantic tune. You press your cheek to the stone and let the staccato rattles fill your skull, a living orchestra of miniature insects. Druids interpreted these insect calls as messages from the spirit of rebirth, signaling the time to sow barley or gather honeyed essences for healing balms. Strange fact, anthropologists found that when those same grooves were tested with metal rods, centuries later, they produced entirely new insect-like harmonics, proof that the stone's voices evolve with each encounter, like nature's ultimate jam session. A sudden gale picks up, and the once distinct animal calls blur into a cacophony, a wolf's howl, an ox's grunt, an eagle's screech, and the crack of hooves all tangled together in a swirling chorus. You stagger, arms lifting to maintain balance, and laugh despite the absurdity, a modern cameo in an ancient wildlife documentary. The stones ring with wildlife's anthem, reminding you that every aspect of nature was woven into druidic divination. Wind beasts, stones, and human hearts, all singing one swirling song. You straighten and press your palm to the nearest monolith, feeling its raw texture vibrate with residual echoes. It's a grounding moment, a reminder that while you chased phantom critters and breezes, the stones held steady, patient witnesses to centuries of omens and animal spirits. You inhale deeply, tasting the damp moss and brine tang again, and offer a silent nod to the invisible menagerie hidden in each gust. Rising, you brush grass from your knees and step forward, leaving behind the pillar of wildlife echoes. As you drift toward the circle's edge, the winds settle into a gentle sigh, petting your cloak as though bidding you farewell. You carry with you more than just fresh air and goosebumps. Now you bear the memory of animal omens, breathed through stone, a testament to Druids' uncanny ability to hear nature's creatures in every whisper of wind. You step into the circle under the full moon so bright it turns the stone silver and the grass to pale whispers. Above, or in the previous part, you decoded beastly echoes in wind. Now you join Druids in a midnight vigil, reading subtle lunar breezes to foretell what's to come. The air is cool, carrying a hint of sea mist and crushed time, and each breath feels like sipping glacial tea. You wrap your cloak tighter, aware that one misstep on the dew-slick grass could send you sliding into the nearest monolith, an unplanned druidic knock-knock joke gone wrong. A hush settles as the high priest, draped in raven-black robes, raises a hand and signals the circle to stillness. You hear the softest sigh of wind brushing across tilted stones, a sound so delicate you almost miss it. It's like catching a whispered secret in a crowded coffee shop. The Druids watch as that hushed gust spirals through the stones, its tone fluctuating with a gentle crescendo, an ancient Morse code spelling out omens. You lean forward, fingers brushing clover at your feet, and let the wind's message wash over you. Calm nights ahead, but prepare for shifting tides. You recall the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969, one of history's most mesmerizing moonlit events, when humanity first walked lunar plains. Yet here, under the same lunar glow, Druids charted moon phases not for science, but for prophecy, attuning to how moonlight tempered nightly winds. Strange fact, dew formed under a full moon carries higher ion concentrations, which Druids believed amplified messages carried on the breeze like nature's own high-definition broadcast. You imagine them collecting dew in jade cups, swishing it over carvings to tune the stones before each vigil. The high priest murmurs an incantation voice low yet resonant, and the wind responds by rippling through a narrow gap in two paired stones. The resulting whistle is so pure it could be mistaken for a nightingale's call, an ironic trick of acoustics and moonlight. You cup your hand behind your ear, coaxing the tone into focus, and it sharpens into a single clear note. Druids interpret this pitch as clarity of mind, a sign to heed inner counsel in the coming month. Historians still debate whether these lunar wind readings were systematic rituals encoded in Druidic lore or spontaneous intuitions honed by generations of night watchers. A shard of moonlight splinters across a lichen-covered pillar, highlighting a carved spiral that guides the wind into a tiny listening cup at its base. You kneel, pressing your ear to the stone, and the wind's murmur is a soft hum, like the distant warmth of ancestral voices breathing through granite. You trace the spiral's curve with a fingertip, feeling its polished groove and the prick of frost. A subtle tremor of air brushes your cheek, as if the spirit world itself leans in to share a secret harvest fortunes. Look bright if you sow tomorrow's seeds by first light. You stand slowly, careful not to jostle the silent vigil. Lanterns of woven reeds flicker at the circle's outer ring, casting dancing shadows behind the stones. They're oil-pressed from crushed flax seeds and scented with juniper smells, both sweet and sharp, like waking up to muesli with a shot of gin. You tuck that aroma into your memory, knowing that Druids believed lantern smoke purified the moonlit winds, ensuring the messages weren't tainted by mischief. It's a bit like running air through a carbon filter before drinking old-school air conditioning from mystics. Above, or in the previous part, you heard wind animal calls. Here, the wind sounds almost human, a gentle sigh rolling across the circle as though the stones themselves exhale relief at the moon's arrival. You close your eyes and let it wash over you, feeling your heart synchronize with its rhythm. It's an intimate moment, like listening to breath under a shared blanket. A lone owl hoots in the distance, and the Druids respond with a solemn chant, weaving their voices into the wind's chorus. You hum along softly, no perfect pitch, but enough to feel part of the ritual. Suddenly, a brisk gust swirls through the stones, rustling your hair and tugging at your cloak, and the wind's tone shifts from gentle hum to a brisk trill. It's the signal for gratitude to the moon goddess, who in Celtic lore governs tides both sea-born and heart-born. Druids toss tiny pouches of lavender into the breeze, an offering for peace and clarity, and the sachets spin away their soft thud against stone, echoing like miniature drumbeats. You laugh softly at the sight, imagining Druids competing for the farthest lavender, toss a midnight carnival dunk tank for scent. The high priest lowers his head, signaling the closing of the vigil. You feel the wind's song settle into a gentle lull, each note rolling into silence, as though the stones themselves draw a quiet breath. A final gust brushes your cheek like a tender goodnight kiss, and you exhale, tasting the sweetness of juniper-laced smoke and moonlit dew. In that hush, you sense both an ending and a promise. The wind will return, and its messages, like old friends, will sing again under the next full moon. As you retrace your steps from the circle's heart lantern in hand, the stones stand sentinel, silent witnesses to the night's revelations. Each carved groove, each listening cup, each tossed lavender pouch holds a fragment of lunar prophecy awaiting the curious soul brave enough to listen. And as the circle falls behind you, bathed in moonshadow, you carry with you the memory of winds, interpreted by candlelight and faith, proof that even in deepest nightstone and air conspire to speak truths beyond time. You stagger as a sudden gale bursts through the circle, rattling monoliths like teeth chattering in an icy wind tunnel. Above or in the previous part, you listen to moonlit whispers. Now you feel the raw roar of storm warning channeled through stone. The air crackles with ozone tasting of distant lightning and charged anticipation like sticking your tongue out just before a soda can fizzes over. You brace both hands on a fluted pillar, its carved grooves whistling in counterpoint to the wind's furious drumbeat. A deep bass rumble rolls across the field, an undercurrent beneath the gusts, as though the earth itself is growling. You recall the Spanish Armada's sorry fate in 1588, when coastal gales shattered the fleet against Irish shores, an event still dramatized in history documentaries. Here, Druids rid similar rumblings as premonitions of calamity. A low-frequency moan meant prepare for tempests, while staccato knocks against stone faces signaled watch for raiders. Strange fact, at the Muckery Moor Circle in Scotland, modern acousticians measured wind-produced vibrations that matched the exact frequencies of approaching hurricane winds centuries before meteorology existed. The gust shifts, carrying the scent of wet heather and distant pines, like someone lit a bonfire on the far hillside. You close your eyes, inhaling the herbal smoke aroma, and let the wind's voice fill you. Gather family's secure livestock, it seems to say. You open your eyes to see petal-like lichen flakes dancing off the stones, spiraling in the air before settling like ash. It's eerie, but your wool cloak flaps around you like an animated cowl, reminding you that storms are nature's own superhero cape, dramatic, unpredictable, and slightly terrifying. You step toward a massive portal stone whose smooth face is etched with long, narrow channels. The wind channels ram through these trenches, creating sharp whistles that slice through the howls. You lean in, placing your palm against the channel's base, and feel tiny hammer-like vibrations modulating beneath your skin, proof that these grooves weren't ornamental, but functional storm sirens. Historians still debate whether Druids carved these channels specifically for storm warnings, or if they repurposed water runoff grooves once used to irrigate sacred wells. Either way, the effect is unmistakable stone turned weather vane. As the gale intensifies, you hear a sudden series of rapid clicks wind echoing through cup marks at chest height, producing a staccato rat-a-tat like a code. You cup your ear to one such hollow and decipher the pattern: 4 quick taps, pause 3 taps. Druids interpreted that as seek shelter. Now daylight rituals abandoned for hasty fire stokes and shuttered dwelling portals. You picture that ancient scramble families hauling hearthstones inside children, clutching carved amulets, all guided by the stone's coded percussion. Your boots skid on shifting pebbles as you rush to a circular stone basin at the circle's edge. The basin overflows with pounding rainwater, drumming against its lip nature's own timpani. You watch droplets leap and collide, generating their own micro-symphony of splashes and echoes. Druids believed that basin drums doubled as barometers. A rising water level meant the storm would swell, while a sudden drop foretold a fleeting squall. You dip a finger into the icy water and taste that mineral chill like sipping melted glacier ice, but with a hint of moss. A sudden flash of lightning forks across the sky, illuminating the stones in stark monochrome relief. You gasp, heart hammering in sync with the distant thunder that follows a dramatic reminder that wind alerted Druids first, then came the lightning show. Funny modern comparison. It's like your weather app pinging storm alerts seconds before your phone's camera flashes. from a lightning Snapchat filter. You can almost hear the storms retweeting through the heavens. You retreat behind a leaning dolmen, its roofstone pitched at the perfect angle to funnel wind right through its doorway. The gust blasts into the chamber, transforming every standing stone into a drumstick, tapping ancient percussion plates. You step beneath the dolmen's lintel and hold your breath, savoring that protected hush, a temporary lull in the tempest, like stepping into a windproof cabana at a beach resort. The contrast is so sharp, it tickles your nerves in the best possible way. Above or in the previous part, you chased animal omens. Here, you yield to elemental signs. You lean your head against the dolmen's granite wall, feeling its solid calm against the storm's fury. The wind's howl morphs into a low hum inside the shelter, resonating like a cathedral choir tuning up. It's a refuge of stillness, proof that stone not only summons storms, but also shelters seekers from them. As the gale peaks, you step back into the open, letting the wind pummel you with its full force. You laugh against the roar, half thrill, half bravado, knowing that druids once stood here, robes billowing, chanting to commune with storm spirits. You fling your arms wide, catching a torrent of gusts like a kite, unfurling no strings, just you and the tempest in an electrifying pas de deux. Then, as suddenly as it began, the wind pulls back, slinking away into whispered breezes. The storm's edge has passed, leaving the stones gleaming and the grass flattened in rippling waves. You run a hand over the portal stone's carved channels and sense the echo of the storm's fury etched into every groove. The circle stands quiet once more, its weathered faces polished by rain and wind alike. You step onto the sodden grass boots, squelching in the aftermath puddles, and feel a deep satisfaction. You've witnessed how sudden gusts became premonitions carved, warnings drilled into stone by hands that trusted nature's fury. As you leave the circle's heart, the wind fades into a gentle exhalation, nature's way of exhaling relief. You carry with you the memory of storm voices transformed into sacred signals, proof that even in the fiercest gale, stone and air unite to speak truths older than any weatherman's forecast. You step off the sodden grass and approach a cluster of flat stones, each perforated with narrow holes and carved grooves, an array of prehistoric wind instruments disguised as megaliths. Above or in the previous part, you felt the storm's roar. Here you explore how druids mimic those voices with stone whistles and flutes. You pick up a slender pipe-like shard, its edges smoothed by time slot a finger into one end, and blow gently. A soft, breathy note emerges like an ancient flute, channeling the sigh of morning mist through petal-thin reeds. The wind stirs around you in encouragement, rattling lichen at your feet. You raise the stone flute higher, tilting it to catch a stray gust, and it sings a higher tone, an impromptu duet of breath and breeze. It's oddly meditative, like listening to a singer tuning up before a concert. You laugh at the thought of modern musicians sampling these stones for a Celtic chill mix, complete with drizzle samples and sheep ambient pads. A sudden sharp trill cuts through the sediment-scented air as you discover a fuller's hollow, a larger stone whistle carved into an oblong shape. You cup your hands around its mouth, channeling the breeze into it, and the note whistles out crisp as a falcon's cry. This wasn't just a party trick. Druids used these whistles at dawn gatherings to mimic hawk calls, summoning protection spirits believed to patrol the skies. Strange fact fragments of these whistles have been found embedded in graves alongside flint arrowheads, suggesting they served both ritual and practical defense roles like wind-activated alarm systems. You recall the Spanish Reconquista's climactic push in 1492 CE, when armies used horns and trumpets to coordinate maneuvers across rugged terrain. Yet long before Druids wielded stone wind instruments to signal rituals, warn of danger, or summon clans from miles away, historians still debate whether these whistles were crafted specifically for acoustic range or repurposed from utilitarian tools like quern fragments carved with holes after they cracked in milling grains. Either way, they broadcast messages on the wind. You crouch to examine a squat conical stone with two finger holes carved on its side, reminiscent of a modern ocarina. Blowing through its mouthpiece produces a rich, woody hum that feels like a lullaby for a sleeping valley. Closing one hole and opening another shifts the pitch into a mellow octave, like watching clouds drift across a sunset sky. You imagine a druid shepherd teaching novices these tunes, each melody tied to a seasonal rite or ancestral story. You hum along off-key, but enthusiastic, like a karaoke enthusiast at open mic night. Nearby, a long flat stone bears a series of equidistant holes like a prehistoric recorder. You edge an ear to its first hole as a light breeze coaxes faint flute-like notes, polyphonic layers of wind channeled through ancient craftsmanship. You can almost hear ghostly crowds gathering robes, swishing as druids played these instruments in harmony with natural airs blending human artistry and elemental forces. It's like a live jam session atop a hill, only the audience is composed of stones and drifting spirits. A sudden rustle in the underbrush spooks you, probably a rabbit or your imagination. You laugh at your own jumpiness and chalk it up to immersive ASMR atmosphere. You return to a squat, bell-shaped stone, its flared opening reminiscent of a trumpet's bell. Bracing it against your lips, you blow hard, and the deep, resonant blast reverberates through the circle, shaking dewdrops from blades of grass. It's so satisfying, you pause to savor the drop in air pressure like popping bubble wrap with your lungs. Above, or in the previous part, you drummed on stone for storm warnings. Here, you wield stone instruments for ritual soundscapes. You recall the 1762 premiere of Mozart's The Magic Flute, a celebrated flute concerto that still enchants concert halls. Yet here, druids carved wind chambers directly into bedrock, their stone flutes sounding in moonlit groves long before classical composers put ink to stave paper. Strange fact, some of these stone flutes share finger-hole spacing with modern flutes, suggesting an intuitive grasp of musical scales dating back millennia. You set down the stones and take a moment to close your eyes, letting the ambient wind pass through the instrument fragments like echoes of forgotten melodies. The field around you hums with layered tones, soft flutes, sharp whistles, and hollow hums blending into a cosmic lullaby. It feels like floating inside a wind orchestra where the earth itself is the conductor. A cool draft brushes your neck, reminding you of the druidic belief that sound travels faster through stone than air. They arranged these instruments near key pillars to amplify their calls during ceremonies, positioning them as speakers in a natural cathedral. You smile, picturing early sound engineers plotting instrument placements like a cauldron's out-of-dust studio session. You pick up a flat triangular stone, its hollowed side like a primitive jaw harp. You pull a slender reed against your teeth and pluck it. The note twangs before the wind picks it up, carrying it across the circle like a lonesome highway tune. Druids use this to signal solitude or to summon solitary meditations, believing the solitary note opened a channel to individual spirits. It's a haunting sound, like a single heartbeat echoing in a vast cavern. As the wind calms you, set each instrument back in its hollow, with careful reverence, arranging them in a semicircle as if preserving a stage for the next unseen performance. The stone surfaces gleam with dew, and the morning sun peeks over the horizon, casting golden filigree across carved motifs. You step back, letting the instruments rest with their silent potential. You inhale deeply, tasting the earth's minerals and smoked heather, and feel a connection to the artisans who carved these channels and hollows. Their craftsmanship transformed rudimentary rock into wind-activated song, harmonizing human creativity with nature's breath. And as you walk away from the stone orchestra, you carry a lingering resonance, a reminder that even the simplest stones can become flutes, devices of divination, and instruments of communal memory when shaped by curious hands and guided by sacred purpose. You slip through the gap between two towering megaliths and find yourself in a hushed enclave where the wind's melody deepens into a sorrowful lament. Above, or in the previous part, you witnessed storm warnings channeled through grooves. Here, you hear wind woven into funeral rites. You drag your feet over a carpet of moss and fallen leaves, each step muffled like a soft drum roll, announcing a solemn procession. The air clings cool and damp, carrying the faint tang of birch smoke from distant torches like nature's incense for the departed. You settle on a low stone bench carved into the circle's edge, its surface polished smooth by countless mourners. A distant gust snakes through a V-shaped notch in the bench's backrest, producing a keening wail that feels almost vocal, an ethereal soprano rising from the stone itself. Druids believed this lament notch carried the cries of ancestors guiding the soul's passage, a natural obituary written in wind. Strange fact, at one prominent site, archaeologists found half-burned sprigs of elderflower in a carved cup mark, offered to temper the wind's grief with floral sweetness. You inhale the smoky birch aroma and recall Julius Caesar's famous funeral in 44 BCE when Mark Antony's oration set Rome ablaze with emotion. Yet here, centuries earlier, Druids invited wind to speak their eulogies, blending breath and stone into elegies stronger than any spoken word. You trace the notch's curve with a fingertip, feeling its subtle hollow vibrate under the mournful gale. A soft howl ripples across the circle, and you rise, following its echo, to a cluster of 3 standing stones arranged in a loose triangle. Between each pair, the wind flutes through slender channels, creating a 3-note chord that lingers like an ancient dirge. The notes descend in a minor key, cold and melancholy, reminiscent of bagpipes at a Highland funeral. You cup your hands behind your ears and listen as the chord repeats, each cycle a heartbeat for those now gone. You step closer to the central stone of the trio, its base ringed with shallow cup marks. A sudden draft swoops through, cascading over the cups like raindrops on a tin roof, producing a stuttering whisper, "Remember us." You press your palm against the stone's damp surface, letting the muted message resonate against your chest. It's a reminder that even as bodies return to earth, their memories ride the wind. Passing through an arch of stones clad in ivy, you enter a small clearing where a flat circular stone lies at ground level, the soul seat. Druids guided mourners to kneel here, whispering prayers, while wind currents, swirling in subtle spirals, swaddled their words and carried them skyward. You kneel, brushing your fingers against the stone's cool face, and whisper a thank you to those who shaped this ritual so deeply. You stand and circle the soul seat, watching as wind eddies around its perimeter, occasionally stirring dry leaves into a quiet dance. Druids tied willow branches to the circle's outer stones during funeral rites, both to honor the willow's association with mourning and to accentuate wind patterns. Historians still debate whether those branches primarily symbolize life's fragility or serve the practical purpose of guiding wind through desired currents. Either way, the result was a poignant choreography of wind and foliage. A sudden high-pitched trill rings out as a brisk gust funnels through a carved slit in a nearby pillar. It mimics the plaintive call of the lapwing, a bird long associated with guiding souls. You lean in eyes misting as the stone transforms wind into a cradle song for the lost, each note a tender promise that the departed are not forgotten. You cross to a leaning portal stone engraved with interlocking spirals, a symbol of life continuing beyond death. Wind rushing through its hollowed core produces a rolling hum as if the stone itself breathes in mourning. You place your hand over the spiral and close your eyes, letting the hum flood your senses. It's both calm and cathartic, a sonic embrace for those who grieve. Above, or in the previous part, you played stone flutes. Here, you stand in silence and let the wind's funeral chorus wash over you. The stones around you are no longer static monoliths, but active participants in ritual, each shaping the wind's voice to eulogize souls carried beyond the hills. Gently, you step back to the soul seat and rest your palm against its sun-warmed surface, the first hint of dawn's light softening the gloom. The funeral wind rite is ending, but its echoes remain etched in stone and memory. You rise, brushing dew from your knees, and offer one last nod to the silent stones. As you walk away, lantern held low, you carry with you the wind's lamentation, a reminder that grief, like wind, can find form in stone and soar beyond mortal words. You slip through the gap between two towering megaliths and find yourself in a hushed enclave where the wind's melody deepens into a sorrowful lament. Above, or in the previous part, you witnessed storm warnings channeled through grooves. Here, you hear wind woven into funeral rites. You drag your feet over a carpet of moss and fallen leaves, each step muffled like a soft drum roll announcing a solemn procession. The air clings cool and damp, carrying the faint tang of birch smoke from distant torches, nature's incense for the departed. You tug your cloak tighter, half expecting a sympathetic ghost to adjust it for you, and almost laugh at the thought of afterlife etiquette. You settle on a low stone bench carved into the circle's edge, its surface polished smooth by countless mourners. A distant gust snakes through a V-shaped notch in the bench's backrest, producing a keening wail that feels almost vocal, an ethereal soprano rising from the stone itself. Druids believed this lament notch carried the cries of ancestors, guiding the soul's passage, a natural obituary written in wind. Strange fact, at one prominent site, archaeologists found half-burned sprigs of elderflower tucked into the notch's cup marks, offered to temper the wind's grief with floral sweetness. You inhale the smoky elderflower aroma and let it calm your heart like a chamomile tea minus the teacup. You recall Julius Caesar's funeral in 44 BCE when the Roman Forum roared with oratory and pyres, a spectacle immortalized by Cicero. Yet here, centuries before Roman ambitions reached these isles, Druids invited wind to speak their eulogies, blending breath and stone into elegies more enduring than any speech. You trace the notch's curve with a fingertip, feeling its subtle hollow vibrate under the mournful gale. It's like your phone vibrating in your pocket if your phone could mourn your last failed selfie. A soft howl ripples across the circle, and you rise following its echo to a cluster of 3 standing stones arranged in a loose triangle. Between each pair, the wind flutes through slender channels, creating a 3-note chord that lingers like an ancient dirge. The notes descend in a minor key, cold and melancholy, reminiscent of bagpipes at a Highland funeral. You cup your hands behind your ears and listen as the chord repeats each cycle, a heartbeat for those now gone. If Mortal Kombat had a funeral scene, it would be this dramatic. You step closer to the central stone of the trio, its base ringed with shallow cup marks. A sudden draft swoops through, cascading over the cups like raindrops on a tin roof, producing a stuttering whisper, "Remember us." You press your palm against the stone's damp surface, letting the muted message resonate against your chest. It's a reminder that even as bodies return to earth, their memories ride the wind, no cremation urn or social media post required. Passing through an arch of stones clad in ivy, you enter a small clearing where a flat circular stone lies at ground level, the soul seat. Druids guided mourners to kneel here, whispering prayers, while wind currents swirling in subtle spirals swaddled their words and carried them skyward. You kneel, brushing your fingers against the stone's cool face, and whisper a thank you to those who shaped this ritual so deeply. It feels like sending a postcard to the afterlife with maximum postage. You stand and circle the soul seat, watching as wind eddies around its perimeter, occasionally stirring dry leaves into a quiet dance. Druids tied willow branches to the circle's outer stones during funeral rites, both to honor the willow's association with mourning and to accentuate wind patterns. Historians still debate whether those branches primarily symbolize life's fragility or serve the practical purpose of guiding wind through desired currents. Either way, the result was a poignant choreography of wind and foliage that no tick-tock dance tutorial could replicate. A sudden high-pitched trill rings out as a brisk gust funnels through a carved slit in a nearby pillar. It mimics the plaintive call of the lapwing, a bird long associated with guiding souls. You lean in eyes misting as the stone transforms wind into a cradle song for the lost, each note a tender promise that the departed are not forgotten. You swallow a lump in your throat and clear it discreetly because awkward throat noises would ruin the ambiance. You cross to a leaning portal stone engraved with interlocking spirals, a symbol of life continuing beyond death. Wind rushing through its hollowed core produces a rolling hum as if the stone itself breathes in mourning. You place your hand over the spiral and close your eyes, letting the hum flood your senses. It's both calm and cathartic, a sonic embrace for those who grieve without any of those awkward talk to me about your feelings questions. Above, or in the previous part, you played stone flutes. Here you stand in silence and let the wind's funeral chorus wash over you. The stones around you are no longer static monoliths, but active participants in ritual, each shaping the wind's voice to eulogize souls carried beyond the hills. Gently, you step back to the soul seat and rest your palm against its sun-warmed surface, the first hint of dawn's light softening the gloom. The funeral wind rite is ending, but its echoes remain etched in stone and memory. You rise, brushing dew from your knees, and offer one last nod to the silent stones as if acknowledging their ghostly performance. As you walk away, lantern held low, you carry with you the wind's lamentation, a reminder that grief, like wind, can find form in stone and soar beyond mortal words. You slip back into the circle's embrace just as dawn's first light warms the stones, and you sense a gentle shift in the air. Today's wind isn't here to warn or mourn, but to heal. Above, or in the previous part, you witnessed funeral laments. Now you enter a space alive with breathing remedies. You stand on dew-kissed grass, inhaling the crisp tang of mint and rosemary carried on a soft breeze like Mother Nature's own essential oil diffuser, minus the expensive price tag. Ahead, a ring of stones marks the healing hearth, their faces carved with shallow basins and cup marks. Druids once laid bundles of mugwort yarrow and lavender in these shallow depressions, letting wind swirl through the aromatic herbs and carry their essences across the circle. Strange fact, some aromatic blends included powdered snail shells, believed to stabilize volatile scents, an early example of stone-stable fragrance fixatives that even modern perfumers envy. You crouch to touch the carved basins, feeling tiny grooves polished smooth by centuries of ritual offerings. A breeze stirs, lifting loose lavender petals from the stone's edge. You close your eyes and inhale deeply, letting the floral sweetness calm your racing heart. It's like popping a stress relief gummy, only real and way more botanical. Druids timed these healing rites to coincide with the vernal equinox, a popular event still celebrated in modern festivals, honoring spring's renewal. They believed fresh winds carried not only pollen, but palpable restorative power, mending bones, easing fevers, and soothing weary souls. You lean against a tall monolith carved with intertwining vines, their relief shapes guiding the wind toward a narrow slit at chest height. Pressing a hand there, you hear the breeze hum through the channel in a low, gentle tone, an ancient tuning fork for your spirit. You let the sound vibrate against your sternum, imagining it loosening knots of tension in your muscles like a cosmic foam roller. Historians still debate whether Druids shaped these vine-carved channels specifically for vibrational therapy, or if they adapted decorative botanical motifs to serve dual purposes. Rising, you follow a circle of flat stones set in a spiral pattern on the ground, a womb path for meditative walking. Druids pace this spiral under drifting winds infused with healing herbs each lap, symbolizing a return to balance. You step barefoot along the slick moss and cool granite, feeling the spiral's contours guide your steps as the herb-scented breeze brushes your ankles. It's surprisingly calming, like a labyrinthine yoga sequence that also doubles as an aromatherapy session. As you complete the spiral, you come upon a shallow stone trough where clear spring water once pooled, called the Cura Cup. Druids believed that wind-whipped water held amplified healing properties. You dip a hand into the basin, the icy water pricking your skin like tiny needles, and splash your face, tasting its pristine chill. The combination of wind-chased water droplets and herb-scented air washes your mind clean like hitting a factory reset on stress. Nearby, a circle of small standing stones, each topped with a tuft of dried heather, catches stray breezes and releases faint plumes of floral smokiness. You stoop to inspect one, tracing your fingers around the heather's brittle stems. Harvested only on certain moon phases, this heather was believed to open the heart's channels and promote emotional healing. You crush a few petals between your fingers and inhale the smoky, sweet aroma like sipping a delicate herbal tea over a crackling fireplace. A warmer gust sweeps through, carrying the distant thrum of a waterfall far beyond the circle's edge. You tilt your head to catch the swirl of aromas, mint birch bark, and a subtle hint of pine resin. It reminds you of the grand therapeutic baths at Bath in Roman Britain, where natural hot springs drew crowds seeking cures for rheumatism and gout. Yet here, Druids guided you to find healing without costly baths, just whinstone and the forest's pharmacy. You wander toward a pair of low pillars carved with diagonal channels, their angles forming a cross-wind pattern. When winds from opposing directions collide, they churn into a gentle vortex above the channel intersection, a miniature air cyclone believed to draw out illness from the body. You crouch between the pillars, arms lifted, and let the swirling breeze wrap around you like a cleansing cloak. The sensation is both ticklish and tingling, like being inside a natural wind spa. In the center of the enclave stands the Healer's Stone, a squat monolith carved with cup and ring marks that catch breezes in concentric spirals. Druids placed wounded animals or ailing tribespeople here, letting wind dance through the carvings to channel restorative energy into afflicted limbs and fevered brows. You press your palm against its side, feeling the stone's cool solidity and the wind's energetic pulse. It vibrates like a tuning fork, sending a subtle hum through your arm, and you swear you feel tension melt away. A sudden rustle of leaves alerts you to fresh arrivals. A family of red deer standing just beyond the circle noses, lifted startled by the scented winds. You watch as the breeze teases their velvet ears, carrying herbal notes to calm the herd. Druids revered animals as fellow healers, believing winds carried their silent wisdom. You imagine deer spirits guiding you toward what you most need, a gentle lesson in stillness and trust. You rise and follow a final wind channel carved into a tall, slender pillar, a deep groove flanked by twin cup marks at head height. Leaning in, you whisper a silent wish for enduring wellness. Then let the wind swirl through the cups, amplifying your prayer as it races around the pillar. It emerges on the other side as a soft, sustained tone, a sonic blessing cast across the circle. You press your cheek to the stone and listen as your whispered hope reverberates proof that healing intentions like wind can't be contained. As dawn breaks fully, the scent of herbs and pine lingers in the breeze, warming the stones with golden light. You step back, letting the enclave's energy settle around you like a healing blanket. And as you drift away along the spiral path, you carry with you the knowledge that wind, when guided by stone and sacred hands, can become the most ancient and effective medicine of all. You step into a quiet clearing, ringed by stones engraved with spirals and knotwork, and feel a subtle hush settle over the air, as though the land itself is leaning in to share a secret. Above, or in the previous part, you felt healing winds. Here you discover the whispered legends Druids wove about wind spirits trapped within the very stones around you. You pause at a tall monolith whose weathered face glows faintly in the morning light, tracing a carved eye motif with your fingertip, and imagining that eye flickering open at twilight to watch over the circle. According to lore, that eye was said to house evil, the sly wind imp bound by ancient oath to ferry messages between worlds. A sudden breeze rattles loose lichen, and you swear it was a mischievous giggle carried on the air evil at play, centuries after the binding ritual was carved into stone. As you walk clockwise, the grass beneath your boots cushions each step, and the air carries a faint hint of sandalwood incense, an echo of old offerings meant to placate stone-bound spirits. Strange fact, some medieval manuscripts record an 8th century hermit who claimed to have seen wind wisps swirling inside a stone circle manifesting as flickering lights he likened to will-o'-the-wisps. Skeptics chalked it up to swamp gases and moonlight, but devout believers insisted it was proof that Druids had truly trapped voices in rock. You press your ear against a low cup-marked stone and hear a low melodic hum that seems to echo half-remembered lullabies from childhood, an uncanny reminder that memory itself can be woven into mineral. You recall the Norman conquest of 1066 CE, when new rulers swept across Britain claiming land and rewriting customs. Legends say that as Norman knights hurled down Druid enchanters and seized sacred groves, the trapped wind spirits rebelled, storming through the stones in fierce tempests that scattered cavalry and drove invaders back to the sea. Historians still debate whether those storms were orchestrated by disgruntled Druids or were simply violent autumn gales exaggerated in bardic tales. Either way, the Romans had once experienced a similar phenomenon. Caesar's legions reported hearing ghostly trumpets in fog-shrouded fields, later attributed to wind howling through stone monuments they failed to understand. A gentle gust picks up as you approach a pair of leaning stones marked with interlaced rings. You lift your hands to catch the breeze, letting it swirl between your fingers like threads of mist. According to one tale, these rings were the bonds of an ancient oath. A Druid priestess named Branna trapped her own breath in the stones to safeguard her people's wisdom from Roman book burners. Legend has it that on moonless nights you can still hear her whispering counsel in the wind, whether to steer sailors clear of hidden reefs or to comfort lonely travelers miles from home. Strange fact, in the 1920s, a folklorist recorded villagers in rural Cornwall reporting a woman's sigh emanating from a broken stone circle on stormy nights, no doubt Branna checking her stones for cracks. You lean in close to the larger of the two rings and murmur, "Show me your secrets," then press your palm against the cool surface. A sudden swirl of wind races through a carved notch, producing a breathy susurration that feels strangely like words, an invitation to listen more deeply. You close your eyes and let the multi-voiced chorus swirl through you, imagining each breath a member of an unseen court of wind spirits convening beneath the stars. You think back to the Mayflower's voyage in 1620, when desperate pilgrims relied on wind for salvation and whispered prayers to whichever spirits guided the sails. Here, centuries earlier, Druids sought to harness those same winds as allies and confidants. As the wind settles into a gentle hum, you notice a small stone at your feet, carved with a stylized raven. Local legend holds that ravens served as messengers between the living and the stone spirits, guided by the trapped breaths of Druids long gone. You kneel to inspect the raven stone, feeling the carved feathers warm under your fingertips. According to lore, if you caught a raven's call riding the wind through those feathers, it meant a loved one's voice had slipped from the other world into this realm, a comforting thought if you ever felt longing for someone lost. Historians still debate whether raven carvings were functional wind traps or simply protective talismans grafted onto more ancient stonework. Either way, their presence hints at a layered tapestry of belief melding pagan and later folk traditions. You rise and step back to view the full circle, each stone a stanza in an unwritten epic of wind and memory. It strikes you that these legends of Avel's giggles, Branna's sighs, raven messengers are more than charming fairy tales. They are living frameworks that help communities make sense of the unseen forces around them. You inhale deeply, tasting the mineral tang of stone dust and the faint sweetness of heather on the breeze, and realize that the stones speak in metaphors. Their grooves are words, their whispers are verses, and their legends are the poems of wind itself. As you drift toward the circle's edge, the early sun gilds the carved spirals, illuminating them like runes waiting to be read. You offer a final respectful nod to the stone guardians and their wind-bound inhabitants, knowing that legends endure not because they are literally true, but because they carry truths about human hope, fear, and wonder. And as you step away, the whispering circle seems to exhale one last soft melody, an invitation for the next curious soul to listen, believe, and add their own breath to the stone's endless song. You slip through a narrow gap where two broken pillars lean together, ducking beneath a low lintel streaked with white lime, a telltale mark of Roman attempts to erase sacred carvings. Above, or in the previous part, you wandered through legend-laden stones. Now you tread on the shadow of an empire determined to silence those very winds. The air here is heavy, with the scent of chalk dust and ancient ash, like stumbling into a medieval Renaissance fair after a fireworks finale. You swallow, tasting dryness on your tongue, proof that you're not just smelling history, you're inhaling the after effects of conquest. A sudden whisper of wind rattles through a parallel groove in a fallen capstone, producing a stifled groan that feels like a suppressed sob. In AD 60, Governor Suetonius Paulinus led Roman legions to the sacred isle of Mona Anglesy's druidic heart, burning groves and smashing stone circles in what's still remembered as the bloodiest druid purge in Britain. You imagine the monolithic stones trembling under Roman pilum strikes, dust clouding the air in a brutal reenactment of a grain silo explosion. Strange fact. Roman soldiers later reported hearing eerie moans echoing across the burned-out circle, swearing that wounded druid spirits wailed through the wind-chiseled notches. You lean your back against a chipped pillar, feeling its rough surface under your cloak, and watch as a stray breeze stirs loose fragments of whitewashed Roman lime intended to obliterate symbolic carvings, now peeling like faulty wallpaper. You rub a finger over a faint knotwork design left behind, marveling at the artisans who carved it deeper than the conquerors could scrape. It's like your favorite band refusing to take down a hidden bonus track no matter how many record executives scream copyright. Historians still debate whether the Romans deliberately whitewashed sacred stones as a psychological weapon or simply sought to reuse the worn pillars as recycled building materials for their forts. A light wind tickles the loose chalk at your feet, carrying a faint metallic tang, perhaps from rusted Roman nails long since dissolved by rain. You follow the breeze to a collapsed altar stone, its twin channels still catching minor gusts and warping them into hollow whistles. Druids once used these channels to warn congregations of imperial patrols. Now they seem to be mocking you, offering ghostly renditions of Roman warning siren 1st century edition. You cup your hands around the channel's mouth and exhale, watching the breeze pick up your breath and carry it in a playful swirl that almost teases you for intrusion. You step forward, careful not to disturb the scattered fragments of broken amphorae Roman wine jars repurposed as desecrated altar fragments. A bitter red wine scent lingers beneath the mortar smell, reminding you that conquering armies often celebrated victory with liberated cellar stock. You lean down, tasting a droplet of fermented residue left in a carved cup mark, intense vinegary, and oddly comforting like an ancient cocktail of blood, sweat, and tears. You smirk at the thought of Romans toasting their triumph with druidic libations stolen as trophies. Rising, you scan a nearby standing stone marred by Roman graffiti, the name Spavinivs scratched crudely into the surface. It's the tag of a centurion too bored to keep a guard shift, turning hallowed ground into his personal graffiti wall. You trace the chisel marks with your finger and imagine the soldier swiping a stylus across stone like a disgruntled kid tagging school desks. It's as if Banksy went rogue in AD 60 only. Instead of brunch spots, he defaced monolithic shrines. A sudden gust sweeps across the clearing, rattling your hood and rattling loose motivations, Roman military might versus druidic reverence. You catch a faint echo of a low whistle through a D-shaped notch in that graffitied stone, the same notch once used to call clanspeople into ritual assemblies. The juxtaposition of imperial scrawl and sacred groove feels like reading government memos scrawled over a protest banner, brutal, disrespectful, yet oddly poetic. As the wind softens, you notice a cluster of smaller stones bearing scorch marks, signs of Roman torch sweeps meant to smoke out hidden druids. You crouch and examine the blackened edges, feeling the rough pitting where fire and stone met in a violent extinguish. It's like spotting scorch marks on an old vinyl record. The sound's been scorched out. But if you listen carefully, you can still feel the music yearning to break through. You stand and follow the breeze to a partially buried stone marked with a poorly carved Latin phrase, FV Geit Flee. It seems a Roman scribble that warned fellow soldiers of druid traps and Imperial's only wind sign painter's note. You press a hand to the damp grass and half whisper, "Flee, that's good advice," but your feet stay planted, transfixed by the wind, picking up embers of suppressed rituals. It's like knowing you should log off social media, yet you can't stop scrolling through flameware comments. Above or in the previous part, you traced spirit-laden whispers. Here, you detect defiance lodged in stone. You wander toward an immaculate pillar that survived the purge its surface unmarred by Roman zeal. A gentle breeze circles it, carrying the scent of fresh grass and faint smoke, a reminder that druidic wind rites persisted in secrecy even after open ceremonies were outlawed. You lean your ear to the pillar's cavity and hear a soft, protected hum like a secret podcast recording hidden in a metal box. You recall Emperor Constantine's decree in 321 CE banning pagan rituals across the empire, further driving druidic practices underground. You shiver at the thought of druids slipping into hidden caves, chanting with lips close to the cold rock as wind-whipped chants echoed through narrow crevices. Modern comparison is like an underground hacker collective moving from public forums to encrypted dark web hideouts, trading forbidden code by encrypted breeze. You draw a deep breath, tasting the mingled scents of moss lime and distant ocean spray. The wind stirs, lifting a single fallen acorn from a nearby oak and carrying it across to a weathered altar stump. nature's own offering to the age-old conflict between stone and empire. You watch the acorn tumble, come to rest in a carved cleft, and imagine druids seeing it as a sign that despite centuries of suppression, their wind rights would sprout anew someday, just like an acorn cracking through asphalt. As the breeze ebbs, you step back from the pillar, gathering the weight of untold stories in your heart. Conquerors may have whitewashed stones, cracked notches, and burned sacred groves, but the wind-drawn channels survive humming with resilience. You tuck that truth into your cloak like a secret, knowing that every gust shifting through these stones carries the memory of suppressed rights and the promise that some songs once born cannot be silenced. You leave the enclave of Roman scars behind each chipped glyph and whitewashed patch, fading into the mist as the stones settle into respectful silence. And as you drift away on a final whisper of wind, you carry with you the knowledge that true power lies not in conquest, but in the ability of stone and breath to endure beyond the reach of empire. You return to a reconstructed circle at dawn's gentle glow, where modern neo-druids brush earthen robes and kindle clean beeswax candles in polished brass holders, an echo of ancient rites reborn. Above, or in the previous part, you traced Roman erasure. Here you witness revival of wind wisdom at a site painstakingly rebuilt stone by stone. You step through neatly raked gravel, inhaling the faint aroma of sandalwood incense mingled with fresh-cut grass like an artisanal candle melting in a garden nursery. The group gathers in a loose spiral around 3 new pillars, set with carved wind channels modeled after their ancient predecessors. A slim priestess raises her arms, calling on winds to carry ancestral knowledge. You feel a gentle breeze swirl through the channels, producing a soft trill that resonates like a welcome chord, as if the circle itself greets you back to forgotten fellowship. It's nostalgic, but forward-looking, ancient melody, played on a brand-new instrument. You recall the first modern druidic assembly at Stonehenge in 1905, when William Stukeley's Romantic revival sparked interest in Celtic lore, an early popular event that paved the way for today's solstice festivals. Yet, today's neo-druids do more than watch the sun. They track wind directions with anemometers and digital apps mapping seasonal gales alongside poetic invocations. Strange fact, some revivalist circles have 3D printed wind channels to ensure perfect acoustics, blending millennia-old design with CAD precision. You watch a volunteer calibrate her smartphone app against a carved stone notch. Nature meets technology in a single breath. As the wind picks up, you notice participants scattering handfuls of dried lavender and rosemary into basins carved into each pillar's base. Each herb releases a fragrant puff as the breeze stirs it, an aromatic signal that the circle is alive. You inhale deeply, savoring the floral hint, and compare it to an ad for a boutique spa. You almost expect the tagline, "Revive your spirit wind therapy," available here. But this is real earth-grown botanicals meet sky-born currents in a synthesis of healing and ceremony. The lead druid invites you to step forward and place a ribbon of colored wool into a vertical groove, a modern take on the ribbon. Slits you saw in Section 5 revived for today's practitioners. You choose a deep blue strand for intuition and slide it into the channel. A sudden gust catches the ribbon, swirling it around the pillar before gently releasing it, a moment of personal divination recorded in living motion. It's like sending an emoji into the wind and watching it respond with a gif of swirling leaves. You move to a bench stone carved with new grooves, forming a whisper duct. Two initiates sit at opposite ends, leaning in to share whispered intentions carried along the duct by the wind. You sit down, lean your ear to the stone, and the intended message, a vow of gratitude, reaches you in murmured clarity. It feels conspiratorial and intimate, like signing a digital contract with end-to-end encryption. But here, the encryption is carved granite. Historians still debate whether these whisper ducts were originally conceived for espionage or purely for communal ritual, and today's neo-Druids delight in preserving that playful ambiguity. A crisp breeze rattles a set of stone whistles arranged on a low altar. It's time for sound meditation. You pick up a slender rectangular whistle, blow gently, and the note merges with passing gusts, rising and falling in harmonic resonance. A facilitator nods approvingly, noting on her tablet the frequency patterns produced, a blend of ASMR and acoustic engineering. You laugh at the incongruity. Ancient stone flute meets spectral audio spectrogram, yet it works perfectly. Nearby, a circular trench filled with crushed herbs hums as wind gusts swirl over it, releasing a continuous aroma wave. Neo-Druids call this the scent wind run, believing it carries prayers faster than spoken words. You kneel to scoop a handful of crushed mint into your palms and let a breeze waft it toward the east, offering refreshment to the rising sun. It's like launching a scented drone, except the delivery service is invisibly powered by nature itself. As the ceremony progresses, the chief druid invites everyone to walk the wind spiral, a granite pathway engraved with knotwork and lined with small wind catchers. Each step you take releases tiny bells perched in fence-like holders, their chime guiding your pace. You follow the spiral's curve, letting the combined sound of bells and breeze quiet your mind. It's a kinetic prayer, a moving meditation uniting body, mind, and elemental breath. You feel grounded, connected to those who walked this path centuries ago and to those who will walk it centuries hence. A sudden cloud shadow dims the light, and a brisk gust rises, rattling leaves in the surrounding pines. The crowd pauses, watching as the wind channels through the pillars, producing a resonant drone that underpins the closing chant. It's a communal moment. One wind, one voice, one circle. You join in softly, no perfect pitch, just presence, and sense the energy weave between human intention and natural flow. After the chant, the lead druid thanks the winds and asks everyone to place a hand on the central pillar, now a modern healer's stone, echoing Section 11's traditions. You feel the cool surface under your palm as the group's collective energy hums through the carved channels. It's a benediction for the community, a promise that wind wisdom endures beyond old taboos and new skepticism alike. As the ceremony ends, participants stroll away, many pausing to leave offerings of feather stones or wildflowers in carved cups, a revival of ancient practices remembered in spirit, if not always in exact form. You linger, running a fingertip along one pillar's channel, feeling its edges smoothed by modern touch as much as by ancient hands. It's a tangible symbol stone, and wind-old and new myth and science intertwined. In the distance, you hear the hum of traffic from a nearby road, a reminder that this sacred space exists amid everyday life. Yet here, in the circle, time bends past and present converge in a living ceremony that honors ancestral wind lore while adapting to contemporary needs. You breathe in the breeze, tasting mint and cedar, and carry with you the assurance that wind wisdom, once nearly lost, has found new breath in modern hearts. You stand in the circle's heart at sunrise, lantern long extinguished, as the stones warm under golden light, and sense the full resonance of centuries converging here. Above, or in the previous part, you witnessed neo-druids reviving wind rites. Now, you reflect on the enduring legacy of whispering stones. You drag a hand across a monolith's carved spiral, feeling its polished groove ripple beneath your fingers like the echo of a whispered vow. The air is alive with gentle breezes that murmur through every channel and notch, voices of ancestors woven into stone, still speaking to those who pause to listen. A soft gust stirs fallen petals at your feet, heather, lavender, rosemary, remnants of countless offerings left for healing divination and remembrance. You inhale the floral perfume, a living testament to rituals past and present, and let it ground your breath. In the distance, a lone skylark rises into the sky, its song riding on the wind's back, reminding you that even as stones endure, life continues in flight. Strange fact, some druid circles share acoustic frequencies with skylark calls, suggesting that ancient builders may have tuned certain stones to harmonize with local bird life. You recall the 1914 Christmas truce during World War I, when opposing soldiers paused combat to sing carols across no man's land, a powerful reminder that shared song can bridge divisions. Here, too, wind-born songs united communities across tribes and centuries, carried on currents that ignored borders and armies alike. You close your eyes and let the breeze compose a silent anthem, a melody of standing stones and sentient air, knowing that every gust is a note in an endless symphony. A gentle swirl of wind lifts a handful of moss from a low stone bench and drapes it across your cloak like a living stole. You laugh softly, imagining the druid saints of yore donning mossy vestments for impromptu ceremonies, a wardrobe malfunction that became hallowed tradition. Historians still debate whether such moss offerings were spontaneous acts of gratitude or deeply scripted rituals only insiders truly understood. Either way, the moss now feels like a direct link to those early devotees. You step forward to the circle's outer ring, where 7 evenly spaced stones form a near-perfect heptagon. Wind drifting through each gap produces 7 distinct pitches, an accidental diatonic scale that sounds like nature's own harp. You trace your ear along the ring, following each tone, low, warm, then rising to bright, ethereal high notes. It's like walking across a giant music box, except the mechanism is earth, air, and intent. You imagine druid bards composing songs to accompany these notes, weaving mythic tales to their tonal patterns. The breeze shifts, carrying a faint trace of brine, an echo of distant sea winds that once brought traders and travelers to these shores. You imagine ancient visitors guided here by salted breezes, seeking counsel from stone oracles before setting sail for distant lands. You recall the great voyages of the Phoenicians around 800 BCE, whose ships hugged coastlines under auspicious winds. Druids likely watched those ships slip around headlands, reading wind calls through stones to bid them safe passage. You lean against the central pillar, fingertips pressed into a cluster of shallow cup marks. A hush falls as the breeze hushes too, offering a moment of profound stillness. You close your eyes and feel the stone's solidity beneath your palm, a comforting anchor in a world of shifting currents. The absence of sound feels as meaningful as any gust, echoing the druidic belief that silence itself can carry divine messages. A stray sunbeam dances across the pillar's carving, a labyrinthine knot that seems to pulse under the light. You trace its loops with a fingertip, connecting past to future knower to the unknown. In that labyrinth's twists, you sense all the stories you've encountered, healing breezes, funeral laments, storm warnings, lunar prophecies, and even Roman defacements. This spiral of memory shows how wind and stone together became vessels of cultural memory, carrying echoes of every generation. You rise and walk the circle's edge one last time, pausing at each pillar to whisper your gratitude to the stones that stood silent through millennia, to the winds that sang your way, and to the storytellers who passed these rites forward. Each whispered word mingles with the breeze, adding your voice to the chorus of countless seekers. As you step away, you leave footprints in the soft earth, knowing they will fade, but your whispered thanks will linger in channels carved deep into stone. And so, you depart the circle, carrying with you the legacy of whispering stones, the knowledge that wind channeled and listened to can become story, healing warning, and memory, an unbroken dialogue between earth and sky that endures as long as someone remains curious enough to pause, breathe, and listen. And final reflection. Now, as we draw this journey to a close, feel your breathing slow and deepen, matching the gentle rhythm of a soft breeze caressing ancient granite. Let each inhale draw in the cool, perfumed air of heather and rosemary, and each exhale release any lingering tension like autumn leaves drifting from high branches. Imagine the stones standing sentinel around you, their surfaces warmed by dawn's light, their carved channels humming a lullaby only you can hear. Picture the circle at sunrise, where wind whispers lullabies through notches and spirals, and the air tastes of mint and dew. Feel the solidity of cooled granite beneath your hand, a calm anchor amid shifting currents. As your mind wanders, recall the soothing hum of stone flutes under moonlight, the gentle sigh of healing, winds across pollen-laden basins, and the tender murmur of funeral laments carried aloft by soft gusts. Let these memories blend into a tapestry of comfort, a melody woven of air and rock, carrying echoes of hope, resilience, and renewal. Trust that the wind's wisdom whispered through stone lingers in your heart, an eternal invitation to listen beyond words. Now, surrender to the hush that follows each breeze, allowing images of winding spirals and silent pillars to fade into gentle darkness. Lullaby of stone and wind, rest now to the breath of stones, softly sung in whispered tones. May winds of memory gently sweep through silent halls where secrets sleep. Close your eyes, let stillness flow. In stone, embrace your dreams shall grow. Good night, dear friend in stony grace. Sleep with wind's soft lullaby. Embrace. Good night.